Okay, it's Pete the Bumbling Modeler back again, and we're going to have the final sort of part of the Zero now, really. So last time it was up, it was painted. I've checked for any sort of defects, and I've put a little bit of this ultra glue here on the gaps I had around the canopy and sprayed it again just to try and make them look a little bit less obvious. I've scratched a bit around there, which I'm not happy about, but I'll live with that and just put it on a stand that side so you can't see it. So I'm going to do a bit of decaling now. I'll do a bit on camera and then I'll do the rest of it off camera because it's a bit boring to watch. But what I tend to use is obviously your micro, I'm getting a bit low on that, your micro set decal fixer to hold it in place. Now I sometimes use microsol, but 9 times out of 10 standard Tamiya acrylic thinners, is that on camera? Standard Tamiya acrylic thinners work pretty well, particularly with Tamiya decals, and they're slightly stronger than the microsol. I'm not sure how they're going to be on Hasagawa decals, so I'll try it out. I will probably put one of the underside red bits on first, then if it all goes horribly wrong I can spray that, but it won't be as obvious when you're looking at it, but it should be okay. So colour scheme wise, the box art, this A155 has got the best colour to it, so we'll go with that, and we've just got to figure out what goes worse. It's 1, so this is inside of 1. So let's try decal number 2, which is these ones. I'll just cut one off for now, because as I say, we're going to be just checking the strength of the decal setting solution. What I have done before is things like where it says Hasagawa there, or this writing, if I wanted to see if a decal solution reacts to the decal because it's an unknown one and it's an irreplaceable kit, I'll put that on a bit of scrap plastic and then use the setting solutions, because that'll work the same way. But this one, it's a bit of a, it's not an irreplaceable kit, it's just something I was doing because I had. So let's get that the right way up. Now in my little jar here, I've got some tap water, and I don't bother with all this tap water at room temperature stuff you read, because if you put a little blob there, that'll stay at room temperature or close to it quite quickly. Trusty tweezers, and just check where we're going. So it's just forward of this main spar line and 3/4 of the decals, so it's about here, that sort of place. I'm not going to be that worried about accuracy of placement, so I chuck the decal in upside down in my little puddle, and I wait till I see it. Is this on camera? Potentially, but I'll wait till I see the water soak right through to the centre. Once it's through to the centre, I know it's enough to eventually release the decal. I don't want to go wild on it and have them really saturated. So the tools we'll need is me tweezers and a couple of cotton buds and a bit of kitchen roll. Now with the kitchen roll, I'll keep it to one side because the white on that will screw up the picture balance, but I always cut my kitchen roll into 4 squares because I was throwing a lot away after I'd done jobs like this, and when you look at it, the water's crept right through the centre of that, so we can get that out of the water and let that do its thing over here. When have I got a bit of grot on that? When I've thrown out whole paper towels before and I've used them, I've noticed I use the corners and the centres are still pretty clean, so by cutting it in 4 you get the same cleaning power, but it lasts longer, so that's why I do that. It's I'm just sort of talking rubbish to fill in time until it starts to loosen. All the things about don't handle decals I tend to ignore a little bit, to be honest. I'm quite rough with them, but I've never had a huge problem. Saying that, I'm on camera, it could all go horribly wrong, but up to now I've never had a huge problem with handling them. So I'll be quiet till that releases, and then when I edit this in a minute, all this bit from beyond this point will disappear. So if the image looks like it's jumped around, it's because I'm cutting out the boring bit. Okay, that is just starting to slide round on the backing paper now, so we know that's released. So I'll get a little bit of micro set. Don't know what's been on that brush, that was a bit gooey. That's a worry, isn't it? These brushes I tend to only use for micro set and salt unless I pick up the wrong one by accident, and then it could be a problem. But we'll be alright. So just put that over the area where I'm working so things can move around. Sliding nicely now, so I can just transfer that over to the model. Get that right out of the way because that tends to stick onto things and gloop about. And we said 3/4 it was over the pitot tube. I might need to get a bit of micro set just underneath this to get it to move. Moving them dry is a recipe for disaster. So it was just over the line that looks like some sort of main spar, and 3/4 of the way over that. So I'd say it's about there. Edge of it, it doesn't. You can't see the mass weights underneath that actually to see where the edge is, but there's nothing really to line it upon. Other than 3/4, yeah, we'll say that's about it. So once that's on, moved a little bit, but we'll live with that. If we get one on this side, the other one I'll make match. Try and roll all the air out of it without moving it. It's starting to conform to all the rivet detail I put in, so I'm quite happy with that. That's gone down really well without any setting solutions. You can see all the wing detail on it, but what I will do just to make sure is get some of my X20A and hope it doesn't destroy the decal. Now this is a paint thinner, so you only want to put it on the decal itself. You don't want to let it to run all over the paint, but just several thin layers and just let that cover that. This one's going quite well. Some of them it pulls up on it, so you have to keep it moving around. You don't want to pull of it because you'll just end up with a shrunken bit of decal. Well, that will, as it dries, really pull that decal down onto the surface. So what I will do is stop the video now and come back when it's dried a bit so you can see what I mean, but that will make it look like it's painted on. These are really, really nice decals actually. If you do get some on the paint surface, it doesn't matter, just won't lift it with a little bit. But just don't touch that now because it's softened the paint, let that flash off, then it'll be fine. So it doesn't matter if you run over a little bit. But it's just a cheaper way of using small bottles of that when you can get a giant bottle of this for a £5, and I've had this for years because I don't use it as a paint thinner, I only use it as a setting solution as a rule. Thin paint occasionally, but it's mainly as a setting solution. So I'll carry on and do the underside ones and we'll see what that looks like when it dries. Okay, so bits of blue tack in that, or white tack. It's been, I'd say, an hour or so since I've started decaling, so I put this stripe on now because that was always going to be the tricky one to wrap around and end roughly in line. Now I'm quite happy the way that's done, and I'm not sure how well you can pick it up on the camera, but it's started to pull down. So these little panel lines are showing in it, rivets are showing through it. I'll probably give it another couple of coats of X28 to get it to really pull down. But underside again, I've took a slight chunk out of that decal, but I think it'll look worse me trying to mend it than just leaving it. But I'll try and get it in the light right so you can see that those using X28 I've managed to get these, I don't know, roundels, what would you call them? Red dots. They've really pulled in so you can see the detail underneath. So I'll spend the rest of the afternoon decaling this. Then I'll need a clear coat to seal those in, then we'll give it an overall wash, but the clear coat will stop anything collecting around the carrier film or tracking down a panel line and getting under the decal. You wouldn't see it under the decal, but you'd see it under the little bit of carrier film that's exposed. So I'll crack on with that. I'll quickly show you the finished one when it's done. Okay, see you in a minute. Okay, back onto the little Zero again. So since you've last seen it, I've finished the decaling, which is all worked out okay-ish actually. It's all shrunk down quite nicely, and I've given it a coat of gloss varnish to seal all that in. I use this Johnson's Clear, and I've had this bottle for, it's got to be 15 years, maybe a bit more, and I forgot I had it, to be honest. I found it in the back of a cupboard. So I just put it on as a cheap clear coat. You can't really get this anymore. I believe it appears in different guises, different colours, but back in the day this was the cheapest clear coat you could get. And when I used to make a few more aeroplanes, I used to use this quite a lot, and it sort of went out of favour with me. But there's a lot of other cheap clears that you can use now which supersede that. So I just wanted to use that to say I've used it. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone simply because you can't get a hold of it. I don't know what the modern equivalents are like. But anyway, downside of that is because it's old, it sort of beaded up and went on a bit lumpy, to be honest. It's not the best finish in the world, but it won't matter because once we've done the wash, that's going to have another clear coat over it, which will hide that. It'll be a satin coat. That was solely just to seal all the, it's to give it a smooth surface so the washes don't stick, and also to seal the decals in so nothing gets caught under the carrier film of the decals and makes little halos around them. So that was that done. The underside of these wheel wells, I've used this aluminium pen. On the proper aircraft, they appear to be left as a bare metal with a greenish lacquer over it to protect it. Now I was going to do it beforehand, but I forgot and I want to get on with the wash. But what I'll do is try and make up a little sort of thin varnish of Tamiya Clear in green to give it that sort of greenish hue. Then I'll pin wash up with oil paints to make it stand out later on. So that's that done, and all the other components have been sprayed either semi-gloss black so they can have a later silver coating. The undercarriage legs are black anyway, so I'll leave them, but they do need a little bit of silver there where they bounce up and down. The exhaust stubs have been primed and they'll be painted a burnt metal. Tail hook is going to be a steel colour and then clipped in, so that's easy enough to do. And the undercarriage parts, I've given them a coat clear as well, because if you're going to do, and the wheel hubs as well, sorry, the other bits have had a coat clear. If you're going to put a wash over one bit of it, you've got to put it over everything or not, because although we're going to wipe 90% of it off, if it slightly does shift the colour of the paint, then some bits will look cleaner than others. So the wash is going to go on, cover everything that's grey. Or the propeller blades are painted again semi-gloss black. The front faces apparently are bare aluminium, so I'll go over them with this pen. And the back stay black, so it's an anti-glare thing. I may give them a coat of a dark green or something, a very watery coat before I do it, so it fades them down a bit, but we'll do all that in a minute. The first thing to do is get this wash on. Engine cowl you've seen before, that's not going to have any, that doesn't have any gloss coat, but I'm going to try and put a grey panel wash inside those on the panel lines, and that's the standout. I don't think dark dirt will work. Oh, I'm jumping ahead of myself there, sorry. So the washes I'm going to use is a water-based dark dirt. That might be too dark, so I've got the grey to mix it with, but I'll certainly mix a bit of these two together to do that engine cowl, so it's not as stark as and in your face. So all I'm going to do is get my palette, got some paper towel handy when I need it, tip out a big lump of this. Don't want too much on the bench. Tip out a little bit of the grey one. Not a lot of that, because I think I'm only going to use on that one part. And the next thing, oh, by the way, when I've shoved this stick in here to hold it all up, I've got a feeling I've dislodged something in the cockpit, so I might have to pry the cockpit lid off later on anyway. But I've got my dark dirt wash, and I'm just going to get that on the brush and just start to, actually I thought that might be a bit too dark, but I think it's all right. It's just going to go over the whole model. I'm going in the direction of the airflow as well, so any streaks are going to look like the airflow streaks, but everything has to be covered, otherwise it just doesn't work. Right, that's pretty much covered. And you can see some of the rivets are starting to stand out again now, so I want to leave that to one side, and ideally I want it that way, so if any of that runs down, it's running the way the airflow would do it. So we'll do that, and you can't really touch that till it's dry. And this is a bit I always forget, I've got to do undercarriage legs. I'm not too worried about the paint flow on those. They're part of the undercarriage. The wheels, I'm only going to do the outside face of the wheels, let's be honest, no one's going to see them. And obviously I'll have to paint the tyres at some point today. So that's all those bits done. Now we've got this to deal with now, which is the what have we got that can wedge that? That can wedge it. Now I think that wash we've got is going to be too dark to show on there, and I think the grey might be too light. So what we'll do, we'll just try a bit of the grey. No. No, we'll stick with that. I thought we might have to put a bit of darker wash in there so it's not too light, but we want that just so we can see the little catches and gills and things on there. And again, cover everything. Air flows that way, so put it to rest. Facing down. Bubble there. And that's that. We'll leave this to one side for now, because it doesn't really matter too much because it's water based and wash your brush out anytime, so I'm not panicking about getting that done in time. So the other thing we can do while we're sitting here, before I go back to descale my coffee machine, which is a project ongoing at the moment, is we need the outside edge of these blades, and there's a little pin there that locks them into that spinner, so we know that's the outside face, and we're just gonna get a bit of silver. And now I'm going to spray the backs of them. This will probably need a second coat anyway, so I'm not too worried about that. Should have started the other side, but there you go. I wasn't too convinced by these marker pens when they first started to appear in shops, but they do save a lot of time. Right, I'm going to call that on that one. They do need a second coat of that, but I'm going to spray the back of it. So I think it's black green, the colour. It's a really dark blacky green sort of colour that'll make those look faded, and it won't be a full on spray. I'll just dust it backwards and forwards so you get sort of light streaks on it. Then when that's done, I'll come back and give the second coat on the front, and then they'll be ready to go on. These will need spraying an aluminium colour this afternoon. These need spraying. I need to brush paint little bits on them, and that needs spraying steel, and the whole model can go together. But the next thing is just waiting for this wash to dry. Once that's dry, we can rub it off. So I'm going to switch off the camera for now while that dries off. It's going to take, I'd be safe leaving it an hour, because these thicker bits down here, you know, they're quite wet. I could lift them now, but I'm in danger of lifting the whole wash. It's getting a bit gritty there. I think it's being contaminated. But we want everything absolutely bone dry, so rather than rush it, I'll go and have a cup of tea while that's doing, and then we can come back and wipe all the grot off that. So that's that for now. I'll be back when we're up to the wiping stuff off stage, and by then all these little sub-assemblies will be painted, so we can start to look at putting the whole thing together. So I'll be back soon. Okay, it's been probably about an hour since you last saw me, so back of these blades have now been coated with that black green, which is just dull them down. If you compare them against the original black they were, they're slightly faded, so that's okay. Fronts will just need another coat of silver. Just wait till everything's dried off, and probably scrape that little seam away and coat that with silver so it can be glued on. Nose cone's been painted a bright silver, so that's that done. It's the back plate for the nose cone there. So the undercarriage legs, I've got the little chrome bits painted in, and what I did on that was just got a really fine brush, rubbed that against the tip of the marker pen, then I could just get in there and give that little paint. And I'll probably give these a dry brush before they're all glued together, so you can see any little bolt details. The main part of the day though is I've started doing it on the wing. Is this wash is ready to get off, and you can see now that all the little bits of detail and rivetings are starting to be highlighted. Now you can take as much or as little as you want off on this. Some of this is still a bit grimy for my liking, and some's about right. So it rubs off with a dry cloth quite easily. If you've got stubborn areas like round by this little blob here, I'm just getting a cotton bud and just touching my tongue. It's not wet even, it's just not even moist, but it's just a bit of dampness there, and that'll help lift any bits you don't want. But I'm quite happy for dirt to collect around areas like here and around this balance weight. So I'm not going to go crazy on getting that. And where I'm getting it, I want to put, let's get it so gentle little streaks, so bits of grime, as long as they look realistic, are okay. So grime building up around this bump there, I think is quite a nice effect, so that's going to stay. So it's just a case of going over the whole plane now with a towel, and you say this is just a dry paper towel, and it's lifting it pretty instantly, and so bits of grime are catching in the holes and things there. I'm going in the direction the airflow would travel, just so if anything stays, it's behind these areas there to highlight them and to be in the places where they'd naturally have dirt collecting. They wouldn't have it collecting in the front as it's flying through rain and moisture and wherever, it'd all blow back. So some of this is a bit stubborn on the underside, so I've just licked that paper towel. Bad habit, I know. I'm just lightly polishing it back. Now the detail, the straight lines of the detail they've got in, all the little rivety bits now are starting to stand out, which is the extra detail we put in with that rivet wheel. So you don't want necessarily completely uniform. The fact you've got a bit of a streak and a stain in places is fine, but you need to look at it critically and think, does that look realistic? Would dirt build up there? Oops, nearly pulled that off then. So a bit of dirt underneath that aileron there is fine, because when we put washes on later on, when it's had a setting coat, we can work with them and have streaks coming off that. That bit there is a bit too over the top, but I don't mind a bit of it around that opening there. So it's just a case of going through the whole, over the whole plane, gently getting rid of anything we don't want. So none of these details here were there. That's something we've put in those strips of rivets. So that was why it was worth doing now, is just to give the sort of detail you were looking for. So I'm going to switch the camera off while I go over all this, and I'll show you the finished results. So I'll be back soon. Okay, we're finally getting somewhere now. So this is all been cleaned off and had a satin coat put all over it. It's probably a bit more satin than I'd like, but maybe not. You can see a bit of silvering around those roundels, but all in all, yeah, it's sort of got to where we're going to go. So it's just the final little bit. So the undercarriage legs, that one is, well, I know one's on the plane. That one's as painted, and where the heck's the other one? Oh no, sorry, that one's been dry brushed. That one's as painted. You can see the slight difference in colour. It's just to fade it out. Hopefully you can pick that up. So all I've done is got some of this blue grey oil paint, got a bit on my dry brush, and just flicked over them. It's bringing out a bit of detail, and it's just fading the black down so it's not stark. So they need to be glued on. Still need to paint the tyres, and then it's the final assembly. But I think what I'll do now is get rid of that, because that's going to go everywhere. Switch off for a second, and then I'll get the undercarriage legs glued on so I don't risk scraping the bottom. Then we can start to unmask the cockpit and see how the masking's worked. It's starting to lift in places anyway, and see if that sticks damage the interior of the cockpit, and if the cockpit masking was any good to start with. So in fact, let's do it now. Let's not mess about. Let's do part of it anyway and see how we get going. I'll probably do it off camera most of it so I can see what I'm doing, but let's see what we've got going on. So mascal's been left on a little bit longer than I normally would, so it's a bit stubborn. But it seems to be peeling off okay. Let's see if we got any sort of framing, or whether I've completely stuffed it up and we have to go to plan 2. And before you ask, I don't know what plan 2 is. There's definitely some cockpit framing visible there, so I'm going to do this off camera because I can do it easier when it's up close to me. Then I'll come back and show you what we've got done. Hi, back to the little Zero. It was as good as finished apart from a few paint chips and a bit of tidying up around the canopy, which I'm not 100% happy with, but I'm not 100% unhappy with. I think it, at a distance it looks alright, up close it looks awful, but model aeroplanes aren't something I do a lot of. So all I was going to do is put some exhaust streaks underneath it, put a few oil things on the top, and maybe put a few chips around the canopy. But when I was mucking about with it, I put my thumb there and I've marked the paint, and I think that's gone down to primer. It doesn't necessarily look like it straight away because the primer grey is quite similar to the Japanese navy grey, but that's, yeah, it's an ugly mark there. And I think what happens is I'm a bit cavalier with the thinners, and I think although your hand feels dry, the vapours are still in your skin, so you touch things without thinking and it starts to lift paint. Anyway, if it's that way up, or typically you'd see it like that on camera if it's you lot, you're not necessarily going to see that. But I don't want to be the sort of person who makes mistakes and doesn't own up to them and gives us sort of false expectations of what it is to make a model kit, if that makes sense. So I'm going to have a go at eradicating a lot. It won't be invisible mending, but eradicate a lot of that damage, I think. And if I can't, going back to my previous statement, you're not really going to see it, but it's worth a try, rather than just not have a model as good as you can get it. So I've got some of the Japanese navy grey in this little 50ml beaker, and I use these, so I'm not reusing plastic. These wash out with anything, little lab beakers, and you can get them from Amazon, and they're peanuts, but that one I've had for years, and I'm not constantly reusing plastic shot glasses. And I've got my normal self-leveling thinners, if that's on camera. I want to move this model away while I do all the mixing, and I'm going to work away from the spray bead because I'm using so little paint, it's not going to matter. So I really want to thin this down. There's no ratio I'm working to, I'm just making it thinner. I've still got to put the landing gear doors on the inside, by the way, but that thumb mark happened when I was putting the landing gear on, so I've still got a little bit to do. But so it's quite thin, it just about clings, so it's going to be more of a wash than a paint job if this works. If it doesn't work, it's going to be a paint job, isn't it? And I'm using a Galleria Mobius 0.3. Now I used to use an Iwata airbrush. It's an Iwata Eclipse HP, and it's a really nice airbrush. But it's getting a bit old and worn out now. And the other thing is the needle and nozzle set for that is something like 35 quid. It's a horrendous price. Whereas this whole airbrush was only, I think I got it in a sale for about 62, 63. And with my talents, it performs as well as that expensive Iwata. So I wouldn't necessarily buy the world's cheapest airbrush. But then again, I wouldn't rush out and buy an expensive Iwata one. This one feels as nice, it's just comfy to use, it's got a nice spray pattern. So we're going to put our paint in that. and put all of it just a little bit. We're going to switch on the compressor. If this gets noisy, I'll have to voice over this. If you can tolerate the noise, we'll carry on. I'll just put my compressor on. And I just want to mess about with this till I'm getting a nice... That's far too much pressure, it's coming out all spidery. Still too much. Might have made that a little bit too watery. I'm not used to this. Who is it? AK paint. Is it AK? Yeah. Now a test spray on the glove. That's more like what we want. Still floods out if you're not careful. So we do that and I wind in that and shock adjuster so I can't go too far. A test spray on the glove I'm using, not for convenience, but if you test spray on paper, it's absorbent, so you don't, as long as I keep moving, that'll do it. You don't get a feel of if it's going to spider or run. If you do it on a non-porous surface like the glove, it acts like the plastic, so it works quite well. So here's a bit where we have to be brave. I've got my airbrush set up. I've got my paint thin, probably a little bit too thin, but we'll see. I'm just going to try and go in between. Oh no, it's far too much, yeah. Blending it in slowly. Trying to concentrate in between panel lines, but not successful. Let's dry that bit off. There's a little MAC valve on this, by the way, so it can alter the air pressure down here. So let's, no paint, and just dry that off. And we'll build it up slowly till that disappears. Starting to fade into the overall paint already. That is a little bit too watery, so I'm going to just add a blob of paint to it. With Tamiya I would have got away with this. This one seems to flow a little bit too, not too much, a bit more. And it is just going to be a case of messing about with this till I get a paint that covers but doesn't swamp it. Let's see if that's any better, but knock the pressure down. It's a bit awkward having this airline here as well, to be honest. It's going on a bit drier, which is what we want. Yeah, that little bit of thickness in the paint's made all the difference, so then we can go over it again. I think that's probably restored the colour. All we need to do then is restore the wash. So yeah, once that's dry, let's dry it off. I think that'll blend in colour wise where my thumb was. This is just air, by the way, to yeah, that's hidden a lot of my sins there, so I'm glad I've done it. So yeah, okay, happy with that. I'm going to let that dry for a few hours, then I'm going to gently put a bit of wash in the area so it fills in those panel lines, and that, although it's not invisible mending, that will look a lot better than the big thumb mark I had in it. So until I've done that, this little Zero is on hold, but all it really needs is the inner gear doors putting on and there's an aerial that's going on the back, and I don't want to put that until I finish all this because obviously I'm laying on its back constantly. So yeah, I'm quite happy with that. So if you do ever get a thumbprint in a model or anything like that, don't despair, you can quite easily rectify it. And if you've mixed up a lot of, say, the older Tamiya kits have this paint mixing scheme and say it's 2 parts this, 1 part that, and all this sort of malarkey. What I tend to do is mix up more than I need and put it in a jar, so if I do have a mistake like that, I've got the paint ready mixed, because trying to mix it and match it when it's not a standard paint is a bit of a pain. Switch off that airbrush for a second. And the other thing I like to do, if I'm painting something and it's got a series of mixed colours, but I've got a very, very similar colour already in existence, I'll use a similar colour for that reason. So when I do make a mistake, and it's not if, it's when, I've got some touch-up paint to hand. But now that's dried off, the only thing that's missing is a few panel lines. I think a bit of wash in that, and you'd be hard pushed to notice that. I'll know it's there always, but if someone just glances at it, they won't notice it at all. So I'll just leave that. Actually, you can stand it on his wheels, can't it? The other thing I want to do is the rubber black came out glossy on this. I need to put a little touch of matte varnish on the tyres just to make them blend in a little bit. But there will be another 5 or 10 minutes work to get this finished, but we've got this far. I'm relatively happy. I still think the canopy looks a bit ugly, but I've done my best to get that right, really. I'll do a bit more. Where paint's gone on the glass, I've just got a cocktail stick and used it as a chisel to scratch it off. Because it's an acrylic paint, it doesn't stick to the glass or mark it, so you can get away with that. But yeah, I just need a little bit on that. But all in all, I'll put it there so you can see actually. For someone who doesn't model aircraft very often, I'm really happy with the way that's coming out. It's, again, say it's far from perfect, and a lot of this you'll see other people tell you to do things differently to me. Well, if that's the case, listen to them, because I really don't know what I'm doing. I am making it up as I go along, but I'm happy doing it, and if you're happy watching, I'll carry on. So I'll be back to put the final touches on it, which will be exhaust streaks going underneath, a few oil streaks off hinges and bits and pieces, and I'll probably put a few chips around the leading edge of that cowl, and then we'll call it done. I don't want it too beaten up, I just want it to look used, really. So that's it for now. I'll be back soon. Okay, so this is the, oops, I've got my camera in different positions, just wobbled it. This is the final bit of the Zero. All the undercarriage bits are on and glued in, and they were probably the trickiest part of the job, really. Yeah, trying to get them to stay in place. I think I've done it, but it is what it is. That looks a little bit lighter there, but in general it's the same colour, it's just a different tone. So that's a bit where I had my thumb, and although it's not perfect, there's dirt in the panel lines. Again, if you move it around, it kind of appears and disappears, but you can't see it's a thumbprint, so that's worked out. Still got to put an aerial in there. The canopy isn't great, but I've sort of given up doing it now because I'm getting a bit bored, and it's only meant to be a bit of fun. But all I've been doing, cocktail stick, and when I've got little bits, when I notice little bits of overspray, I'm just scraping them back with that, like a chisel, so it gets all the unruly bits off it. There's a bit there. Is that inside or out? Inside, unfortunately. So it's never going to be brilliant, that canopy, but it's not going to be bad. So the next thing we need is some oil washes to put in a little bit more grime. That's probably a bit too grimy there, but it's underneath a sealing coat now. Doesn't matter. So I've got some engine grease oil paint here, some buff, and some bitumen the engine grease I'm going to put on later areas like the hinges and the ailerons later on, anywhere where there's got oil leaking out past these gun ports, that sort of zone. The buff and the bitumen I'm going to try and use to make exhaust stains, so I'll do that first. And what I intend to do is get little blobs of it. Just do one side for now. And this is out of the AK weathering brush set. It's just a round nose soft brush. It's completely dry, no oil on it, no solvents on it. No, maybe has, did have previous oils on it. No, it hasn't. Could have done with a wash, but I want this completely dry. So I'm just going to get that buff and start streaking it back. Might need a bit more than that, and it's just a bit of guesswork how much it's I need, but it seems to be this sort of buff colour is what you get when you've got leaded petrol and you're burning it in a high octane engine. It's just a lead coming back. I should really do the inside of those gear doors the same, but you're never going to see them, so you just want to grind. I don't want to put in the brush in there because that might be too much. I just want to grind it into the paint bit so you get a pale streaky line working back. The photos I've seen, it wasn't, Zeros don't seem to be hugely messy with regard to exhaust staining, so but we just want to do a bit, just how that survived, I don't know, just so we can say we've done it. So a little bit more on this side, and it is only touchy, that's why these oils last so long. The downside of them is you do have to squeeze out about 1,000,000 times more than you ever need from job. You can't just get in. I suppose I could have just stuck a cocktail stick in the tube, but I've got it on this paper towel as well because it's drawing some of the oils out of it, so it'll dry quicker. Without it, it takes forever to dry, so the oil's sort of solvent in an oil paint, or the thinners, so it's a linseed oil, so it dries slowly, which means they're very easy to manipulate, but it dries slowly, so the advantage is the disadvantage. So if you draw some of the oil out first, it'll set quicker. And there's different amounts of oils in different colours by the look of it. So okay, now you see how we've got two whitish streaks there. Then in the middle of those, we need a bit less, we just need a little blob of the bitumen. Needs a little bit more back here because it's going to fan out and get weaker, so we do need to, we don't need a lot. It's not always easy to see in this light. Oh, there's my cocktail stick. Let's put a bit more on. I want a bit whispery. It's just because I want to concentrate and talk a bit more quietly. There's me two exhaust streaks running back down there. You're never going to see them actually when it's down. So the other thing it'll need is, I won't do it on the underside too much because the gear's in the way, but where these guns have been shooting we need a little bit, and we're not going to do the, we're just going to do the bitumen. We're not going to worry about before I put the undercarriage on. We're not going to worry about the white bit because that's a function of engine lead, so that'll just be a slight stain there and there. Yeah, not happy with that one, so I'm going to get a little bit of white spirits. Not white spirits, thinners, odourless thinners. It's a white spirits, but it's really refined. Where are we? It's in me cupboard here. That's flowing hands. So where's me? You'll still hear me talking because I've got the mic clipped to me, but you never find things when you want them. If I can't find it in about 30 seconds time, I'm going to switch off the camera and switch it back on again. But this will do. It's not my, that's not my usual enamel thinners, but it'll do for this job just to clean that up a bit. If it can open the flipping thing. That was awkward. I don't want to get thinners on that brush yet because I need that dry to do some other effects, but I can get a little bit on a cotton bud and just start to clean up what I don't like on that. And bring it back to a far nicer line. Just went far too wide. Then when that's starting to flash off, just do a bit more blending on that. It's a bit more smudgy. Then we brought that back from disaster quite well, I think. Might need a little touch more. So I don't like uniformity. This is going to look very similar on both sides. I'm just faffing about now. So that's that bit. I just need to let this settle down. Oh, no, I don't. I'll probably get straight on and do this next bit. So where's my little palette that we've all seen? So round areas, and I'll do one wing and then move on to the next. So areas round here where we've got a hinge. There where we've got a hinge. There. And this is the engine grease I'm using now. Bits on there. We're going to have a fuel cap here, so things are going to come out of the fuel cap. And collect dust and muck around that one because we can. Not sure what that is, but we'll have that one. Then we've got, I don't know where the hinges are on that, so we'll just put Some little bits like that. And then we are just going to flick back from them, so it's not a dramatically different colour to what I've done before, which is a bit unfortunate. I was hoping you see the difference between the smoke and the oils and greases, but there you go. And I was going to put a bit of white spirit on these, but they seem to be blending in quite nicely without it, so I think we'll just go like, oh god, I'm going to put my hand in that now. I'm going to put my hand all over the model. We'll just go back and show little smears of it running back from various points. So the photos I've seen, these are relatively clean, so I don't think you're going to get that much. It's only going to be, oh god, little bits like that. It's not going to be huge amounts of grease and oil flying around. They seem to be well looked after. So that one, we had quite a bit on the other one. So, and we said that we've got a hinge around there. Around now, we've already got a lot of grot on that. And in that sort of zone. Right, so a bit of streakiness underneath, happy with that. Exhaust staining that isn't at an angle you'll ever see it, but we've got it on if anyone does ever look underneath. We've got the staining around the gun ports, stuff coming out of the tanks and out of here, which is fine. So I'm not going to do much more with that. I'm thinking I can probably call that done, if I'm honest. There's one more thing to do, which I'll do in a minute off camera, is glue this aerial into the rear of the canopy. So what did we actually think about this? As I say, it's a subject I know absolutely nothing about. So I'm just cleaning the brush while I'm talking. It's all new to me. I'm aware there's a Mitsubishi Zero. I've seen Tora, like most of us I was growing up, where there's nothing but fleets of Zeros flying towards Pearl Harbor. So you're sort of aware of what they have done and what they can do. If you are weathering, by the way, at this point, don't use that brush again unless you want to manipulate oils in a wet way, which you can do, put blob and streaks down. That's more of an armour thing, but when you're doing it, it needs to be wet because you're doing wet, or 100% dry. If it's damp, you won't get the effects you've just had there. So I won't be able to use this one for a day or so now, which is why you want to make sure it's all done. And I just realised a bit I haven't, but I think I'll get away with it, is there's nothing coming off the rudder, but I don't think anyone's going to notice that because of the angle. And also now it's a bit damp, that one's a bit over the top, so I can fade that and that and that a little bit. Once it's damp, it's good for the blending, but it's not good for the streaking. It just makes it too streaky. So yeah, I know nothing about the model, so I can't comment on its accuracy. I'm not used to planes, and when I do, I try and avoid ones with canopies like that, because they are a pain to mask. So having said that, I'm happy with the way it's come out. It's not perfect. It's far, far from perfect, if I'm honest. It's a bit messy, but I did it partly on camera, so I couldn't make any excuses. I couldn't get as close as I'd normally do it, and also it's quite a new skill for me. So the fact that I've got some glass showing, even though the framing is a bit unneat, I'm quite happy with. So aircraft models will be shuddering when they see it. For me, quite happy with that. And the other thing worthy of note is, although you can't see a great deal inside the cockpit, the things I have done hint at detail, and you can definitely see the seatbelt straps in there. So making the seatbelt straps out of Tamiya tape was well worth it, because they do stand out. The rest of it's a bit vague, but if you're going to do one thing, that's it. So I'm going to put some detailed photos up of this when we've got the aerial at the end of this video. But in general, I've really enjoyed building that. It was something new, it was something different. The kit fell together. The only slight issue was I didn't quite address the step height on those wings, but now it's all painted and weathered, that's not that obvious. So yeah, I think if you're going to build a 72nd scale aeroplane, the Hasagawa A6M2 is one to consider. It goes together nicely. There's no vices, no flaws. There's plenty of detail. The riveting I've done, I can pick up from a distance. Whether you can pick it up on the camera, I don't know, but it gives a hint of something going on rather than just the panel lines. So the panel lines are all horizontal down here. You didn't have any vertical ones, they're just rivets. So that has given it a bit more of a definition to it. Same on the wings, the panel lines are quite faint. So having the rivets next to them sort of highlights them a little bit. So riveting, it was worth it, albeit a bit stressful. And do you need to do it? No, not at all. The only thing I would try and do, I think if I did it again, is try and find some canopy masks pre-cut, because that took quite a long time to do and it wasn't a very enjoyable task. And if you look closely, you'll notice here I've still got a bit of masking tape under the cockpit. It must have wrapped around and flipped in, and I hadn't noticed, because when you look on the outside you only see the outside. So, but I don't really want to take this canopy off to get that out, so it can stay in there for the life of the model, which won't be long. I don't keep these, they'll just be sitting on a shelf and they'll get broken. So that's it from this. I've got to think of something to build next, but you'll see this, and then probably within 2 weeks we'll be starting on another project. I've got a few things started off which might be worth doing, but we'll see. But either way, that's the Zero finished and on to the next thing. So if you've been watching all the way through, thanks for watching, and thanks for putting up with my interminable waffle and talking to myself while I'm working. So I'll see you at the next video, and thanks for watching this one. Bye.